All right, guys, welcome back to Scourge of War, Lace and Jours, episode 5. Today we are continuing with our French playthrough of the Battle of the Souffel. This is part 2. As you can see, it's 1700, 5 p.m., right where we left off at the end of part 1. And when we left our heroes, we had checked the Austrian advance at the town of Mundelsheim and at the position on the Souffel River in front of Souffel, as well as the extreme right where we had blown the bridge and we were kind of defending on our extreme right flank there. So things are starting to heat up. And in the center here by the stone bridge, we have built up a combined arms fortress formation here in anticipation of an Austrian force coming down the road. So with that, let's get the video rolling and see how things continue to play out here. So when we last left off, pretty much things were starting to get contained at Mundelsheim. I didn't have to watch it as much. There's still action going on, but the situation is pretty stable. There was some little bit of craziness going on at on the extreme right, but we got it under control right at the very end there. I'm still checking up on it. Still checking up on, Mundelsheim and making sure everything is in hand. As you can see, we're still triggering units in and out of square. Some units over here have gotten somewhat closer here. And one of the reasons why I did not set up right on the river by the stone bridge area is exactly this kind of reason. Units being able to move within a closer range than I would really like to, but they're able to stay in line because this is terrain cavalry can't charge into it. I think in a moment I'm actually going to try to do that, and you'll see that I can't. So I'm moving this cavalry squadron forward because this unit is not forming square. What I want to do is obviously just charge them and run them off. But what I'll quickly realize here is because the unit is technically in the river, which is not good terrain to be in, even as close as they are, but cavalry cannot charge into the river, so this charge is not going to work. So you can see I'm bringing the squadron up, I hit the charge button, off they go. Mashing out the charge button, but no, the cavalry stops because they cannot charge into the river. So this is basically why I didn't want to set up in a similar situation by the stone bridge, because I want to be able to use my cavalry. So in this instance, we're just going to have to put up with this line unit being here. However, being in a river is not good terrain to be in. So they're still shooting at a bunch of skirmishers in, woods terrain while they're stuck in, a river. They're still within grape shot range of the guns. So even though I can't charge them, and even though I can't even force them into square, this is kind of an isolated instance of this actually being able to happen. And you can see our skirmishers are still doing pretty good. They're not taking excessive losses. They are, however, some of them are starting to get a little low on ammo. Some their fatigue is starting to, get lower. So it's getting near the time. I still have a couple of minutes, but it's getting near the time where I'm going to want to start cycling fresh skirmishing units into that again. So over here now, we have a Württemberg unit that has made it across the river, formed into line, and we now have our guns trained on them. We have skirmishers facing them, and we also have a line unit and some skirmishers set up on their flank. So they're in about the worst position they could possibly be in. And I'm getting the supply wagon over here because these guns have been firing a lot of canister. Some of them are probably out, and we need to top them off. So here we are over in the right salient, and again, I'm just keeping the supply wagon runs going because there's a lot of close range fire going on up here. The Austrians have really flooded the area with skirmishers right out in front of us here. So there's a lot of targets for artillery to shoot at. And you can hear the grape shot just ripping off left and right here. The left salient has now been engaged. A couple of Austrian units have moved within range of it. Nothing too crazy going on. A couple of skirmisher units, mainly one line unit, but nothing we shouldn't be able to handle. They're not being heavily pressed. So now we can hop back to Mundelsheim here, and probably at this point I'll be looking to siphon out some of these skirmisher units so that they're getting tired and replace them with fresh units. So I'm going to back the cavalry off a little bit just so they're behind the skirmishers, but I want to keep them close by because now that these guys have moved this far forward, if the moment they think about moving out of that river, they become a threat. Because I don't know who these guys are. They could be a guard unit. So if they're a guard unit, the moment they're out of that river, they become a threat. And I would have to just charge them instantly to get them out of there. Because if they run through the skirmishers, they'll run through the line unit. You know, if there's no cavalry. Luckily, I have 2 squadrons right here. So, you know, if this one can't get them, the other one would. It'd be very unlikely that they would actually break through this. But guard units, you always want to make sure you have them covered. But they're penned up in here. Fine, they're safe from a charge as long as they stay in the river, but they can't come out of the river. So either way, we're still, you know, we're still keeping them in check and keeping them from being able to advance on us, which is ultimately the entire goal of this whole position. It's just keeping units from advancing on us. So I'm kicking out fresh skirmisher units now. As soon as this one is in place, you see I'm recalling that one, getting the tired ones out of action. They'll get siphoned, recycled back into the rear columns where they'll rest, and the recycling of skirmishers will just kind of go in an endless circle. As you can see, we have plenty of units back here to play with as far as cycling fresh skirmisher units in and out of action. You know, meanwhile, the Hessians are using up their line battalions to fight us, and we're really just using skirmisher units. So we got about 3,000 points here just for Albert's division. And we got yet the final squadron from Jacquot's brigade moving in. So 123 men over here. We've recalled what we could of those skirmishers from the 10th line. They're recovering their morale. They're probably going to sit there for a lot longer. They did good work at the beginning in delaying the Hessian advance so that we could set that position up. And here we have our 17th Division and Gravel's Brigade of Cavalry waiting patiently for the Austrians to arrive and cross the stone bridge. And we can hear the grape shot raining out from various places along the field. And here's Jacquot. He's finally arrived. He can arrive and take over the rest of his brigade. Now, with Jacquot on the field, right where the rest of his cavalry is, I'm going to go ahead and reattach all these squadrons that I had previously detached. You can see I'm reattaching them all and placing them back under Jacquot's brigade command. There's no reason to keep them detached now. The entire brigade is over here. And we will continue cycling in the fresh skirmisher units. So now at this point, I'm pretty satisfied that we've seen pretty much all we're going to see out of Mundelsheim. And we can see the opening of the Austrian advance down the central road towards the stone bridge, just as we expected from the heroes of Strasbourg. And okay, the line unit has broken. Bad position to be in, even though we couldn't force them into square. They were standing in a river getting shot at by skirmishers. So they have elected to pull back. So the situation is once again stable here. We see another square falling back on the right here. And as I said, I'm pretty confident now that I have seen the best I'm going to see out of the Hessians. The rest of this, I think, at this point will just be maintaining the status quo, knocking back what feeble advances they make. You can see they're all breaking en masse now. So the square is breaking. Their position is really starting to collapse, and it will never get back to what it was at the beginning. So it's not that I won't have to continuously pop over here and monitor the situation, but I don't expect that to ever be a serious hotspot anymore. And when you're dealing with multiple hotspots like this, you're always looking to find out, what is the real hottest of the hot, and what are the areas that are cooling down. Because the very worst situation you could have is 4 flaming hotspots going on at once. That's a lot to watch. Even for me, that's a lot to watch. So the most different isolated spots of fighting we ever had to deal with in this whole series was probably the Prussian Ligny full battle scenario, where you had hotspots flaring up at Wagnally, Saint Armand, Ligny, and the Tongrenelle area, throughout the whole battle. But at no point were all 4 of those areas really flaring up at once, and that's what makes it manageable. One area will flare up, maybe 2, but it doesn't all happen at once. It plays itself out almost in a series of chapters. And that makes it easier, because if an area like Mundelsheim now, which has largely had most of the wind beaten out of the Hessian sails at this point, I just need to every so often go back, make sure everything's cool. I won't need to cycle skirmishers in and out as fast, because the fighting will have petered out a lot. It just becomes a lot easier to watch. So with Mundelsheim largely under control, what we want to do now is at least really try and knock the fighting spirit out of the Austrians at one of these 2 other spots, either the right salient here or the extreme right. Preferably the extreme right, by the blown bridge. If any area of fighting was going to continue to go on here, I'd rather it be this one right here, the right salient, because it is the closest to that middle position on the stone bridge. And we know that once the Austrians cross the stone bridge, that's probably going to be the biggest area of fighting throughout the remainder of the scenario, and probably the most intense, because at that point the Austrians are coming with a complete combined arms force, infantry, artillery, and cavalry, which is more than we've had to deal with any of these hotspots. So ideally, if we can get this under control over here, and you can see that this line unit that was here has now broken and pulling back. So I'm seeing over here that this is our chance to kind of lock this area off and pretty much, neutralize the situation before the Austrians can come down. And you can see it's a big force. They have a lot of cavalry. We're going to get a good shot of it over here as it's marching down the road. At least 2 brigades. And at least a whole division of cavalry. So, Mundelsheim is largely out of danger. That isn't to say I'm not going to have to pop back and watch it here and there. The Hessians may, these are guard level units, they're not going to run, but, at this point, I think, 2 hours of fighting, we've largely depleted their really aggressive fighting spirit. So I don't think we're going to have to watch this area as closely as we had in, say, the previous video in part 1, where this was really the central part of the fighting. I think that aspect of it is probably dying out at this point. And as long as we can keep our skirmishers up front, keep our cavalry up front, keep our artillery and ammo, it should be enough to basically discourage the Hessians from trying to do anything really crazy, other than occasionally sending a unit forward to start shooting with us. Because we're going to have to watch this now. As you can see, big force, lots of infantry, and probably double the amount of cavalry we have over here. probably coming forward with an entire cavalry division. All we have is half of a division back here. We have Gravel's brigade back here. Now, we don't need as much cavalry as the Austrians do because of the way we use cavalry. We're not trying to use cavalry in kind of the historical capacity that cavalry was used. Cavalry is nothing but a formation controller for us. All we want to do is force enemy units into square with our cavalry so that we're able to shoot it on either even terms with them in terms of our squares versus their squares, or so that we can screen our skirmishers with squares and screen our squares with skirmishers. I'm sorry, and fight at an advantage. So we don't need the amount of cavalry that you would need if you were actually trying to use them in an offensive capacity, because that's not how I use cavalry in this game. So I'm okay with one brigade of cavalry, even though they're coming down with twice that. I'm okay with that. So again, the left salient is now being pressed a little bit, but nothing serious. This is just, we got 2 Austrian lines and a couple of skirmisher units. Again, nothing I'm really worried about. So I'm keeping an eye on some of these skirmisher units now and making sure that you can see some of them are getting tired now. And we may have to start cycling fresh units. This unit is exhausted, so we need to now start cycling fresh skirmisher units into this position. So now we're having to do the same thing over here that we were earlier having to do at Mundelsheim, in cycling fresh units in and getting the tired ones out. So as soon as this unit runs up here and gets into position, I place them kind of in the exact same position. We will hit the recall button unit here and pull these guys back and get these exhausted unit out of here. Here they come. And we can probably unsplit the unit right about now and get them the heck out of there. There they go. Alright, so you can see we've unsplit the unit. They are rejoining the rear column here where they can rest. And you can see our artillery now is blasting grape shot into the front part of these units. Our skirmishers are out front screening the guns. They are no longer taking casualties from the Württemberg guns. So this position is pretty well under control at this point. And hopefully we have depleted all the Württemberg aggressiveness as well. And before we depart, we will just click the supply wagon and keep them running. You can see these guns are earning a tremendous amount of points. We might as well check our points. So we are at nearly 7,000 points now. Victory is within grasp here. We need to get 10,000 points. We're halfway through the scenario, but more than 2/3 of the way, nearly 2/3 of the way through to what we need to get a major victory. So as you can see, just a huge force advancing on the central part of my line here as we continue to repulse the Hessians here at Mundelsheim. We'll get a good view of those Austrians advancing down at the center. But luckily, like I said in the first part of this series on the French Battle of Les Souffel, luckily those first 3 Les Jours scenarios, Hessian Fury, Blood Along the Souffel, and the Heroes of Strasbourg, really did actually do a good job of telling the story of how this battle unfolded, so that I was basically able to plan my strategy based on how those scenarios unfolded, and that's exactly how this scenario is unfolding. It's kind of all 3 of those scenarios in one, and we were able to set up here in advance and basically be right on the money as far as what the Austrians were going to do. So here comes the Austrian columns. They're approaching the stone bridge, and our fortress formation is basically completely set up now. We've got some strength a little bit over on our left now to prevent the Austrians from trying to move around our left. They'd have a long way to go to try and get around our right, and ultimately you can see our cavalry is just about linking our line with the extreme left of the Souffel-Wiersheim position. So we're in a good position here. We have cavalry at various points along our line where we don't have guns. Uh, we should be in a good spot. The infantry is in for a rough ride here if they try to cross first without waiting for the cavalry to come up. They would be much better off to hold back and wait for their horse to come up. Whether they do that or not, I don't know, but that's what they should do, is wait for their cavalry to come up, cross the river, and be in a position to attack as a combined arms force, rather than sending one arm forward, getting destroyed, and then sending another arm forward that can't do anything now because they don't have any infantry. So this situation looks like it's really starting to cool off some. Our guns are really well placed now. Anything that tries to cross that river is just immediately getting peppered with grape shot. And while things have cooled off here, I'm going to recall some of these more tired skirmisher units. I'm going to bring this one over from the left bridge, which is basically fresh. And it says the stone bridge has been occupied by the enemy. Now we're forced to retreat and protect the fortified line of Hohenheim. All right, what this basically means is, you remember in the first part, I talked about how the Austrians needed to cross the stone bridge and capture that objective right across the bridge that was only meant for them, and that it triggers a second part of the scenario. That is basically what has happened here. The second part of the scenario has been triggered now. Now, I guess historically at this point, the French decided that they were being attacked at too many points along their line and decided to abandon this Souffel River position here and fall back to the three villages to the south that we had to occupy in the Heroes of Strasbourg. But obviously that is not our situation. We have repulsed the attacks at Mundelsheim, at Souffel-Wiersheim, and over here, and we're set up in a devastating formation at the Stone Bridge. So I am still confident that we can hold this line. So we are going to continue with our game plan here, and I'm pretty sure pretty soon I'm going to bring up the map here as soon as I'm done setting up. Okay, so you can see now that in addition to these two objectives that we already occupy, right, at Souffel-Wiersheim and Mundelsheim, we now have the three objectives that we had in the Heroes of Strasbourg at Hohenheim, Bischheim, and what is this? Schiltigheim? I guess Schiltigheim. I'm sure I'm pronouncing all three of those wrong, but we have these three objectives. However, you can see we have nothing to cover them with. All our forces are committed to the Souffel River position. And at this point, now with all of our forces basically engaged at Mundelsheim, at Souffel-Wiersheim, and here, and this about to be engaged, now's not the time to be pulling back. We're committed to making our stand on the Souffel River. At the same time, we know we also have close to 7,000 points, and we still have nearly 2 hours to go. So I am, now, even though this was a blind playthrough and I didn't actually know if this would work, if I could win the scenario without occupying these three objectives, it's too late for me to do anything else about it. I'm committed to this position along the Souffel River, and I'm not going to go starting to try and disengage forces from way far away and try and get them back here. So at this point, I'm saying I'm either gonna do it or I'm not. But I'm making my stand at the Souffel River. There's nothing I can do. The one thing I'm thankful for is that this is not a trick scenario. Like I guess the best example for that would be the Wavre core scenario to Brussels, where you have all those objectives around the town of near the town of Wavre, and then they're not worth a lot. And then with a half hour remaining in the scenario, Grouchy finds out that Napoleon has lost at Waterloo. All these objectives disappear, and there's two objectives that appear way back that's supposed to be your retreat line, and you everything you've done up here is basically meaningless, and it's time to get the heck out of here. Um, Scenarios like that I call trick scenarios, and I think they're a cheap trick because they only work once. You will only get fooled by that the very first time you play, and then okay, this doesn't mean anything. The real money objectives are the ones that appear with a half hour to go. So I'm just going to send a brigade each to cover those positions, before they ever appear. It's a trick that only works once. They tried something similar in the French no warning scenario with Lobau 6 Corps. Again, these are all cheap scenario tricks that only work once, and Mitra did not go for that here. So we have basically committed to making the stand here, and these objectives stay here, so that makes that plan viable. So it's not a trick scenario in that, these three objectives appear and these two would disappear. That would basically force me to abandon this position. And again, it would only work once because I would know the next time I played that I have to occupy, and I would keep something back here to occupy these objectives, and I would know that I'm not meant to hold this forever. So I'm glad Mitra did not do something tricky like that. Like I said, it's a cheap trick. I don't consider that good scenario writing. And I still think that this is a viable plan. We're committed up here. We still got these two objectives, and we're going to see if we can hold this position with this big Austrian force coming down at our center here. All right, let's get back to it. And yeah, I'm checking to make sure that these objectives are still worth what they're worth. And you can see now they're actually worth more. Now they're worth, the one at Souffel is now worth 100 points every minute. So the rotation has sped up. And the one at Mundelsheim is still the same. But now we can gain more points. So at that point now, I've basically said I'm not retreating. I'm committed to this battle. And I'm going to try and make my stand along this line. So we are still holding our positions. We've done well so far. And I would just like to really quiet down one of these positions on the right so that I'm not focusing on 4 separate hotspots at once those Austrians begin engaging us in the center. 4 is a lot, even for me. 4 is a lot to be watching at once. I can handle 4 if they're kind of going back and forth between flaring up and cooling off, but 4 blazing away all at once, hot spots on a battlefield is a lot to watch, even for me. So ideally, I would like to cool off this area specifically, and really only be tangling with the salients and the central position by the stone bridge. Mundelsheim has largely cooled off. I'm not as worried about Mundelsheim. I just want to get this under wraps. So that all I'm dealing with is really what's in the center. So all right, the Austrians are beginning to deploy into line. Our guns have opened up. They're immediately taking a huge effect with their grape shot. The Austrians have not taken my advice. They have not waited for their cavalry to come up, and they're giving the fortress a chance to immediately start pounding away on them. And you can see just a waste of fresh forces. Already some of their lines are starting to pull back. Their cavalry is still way far away back here. Their guns are not up. Their infantry came barreling up across the river, and they are in no position to contest this. As you can see, we've already turned back 1 unit. This one is getting absolutely massacred. You don't just march up to a fortress like this. It will never work. And this unit is all but doomed. This battery here is in such a good spot. Just Look at this. All along the line, we're just blasting holes, you know, into this unit. More infantry coming across, but they're heading to the right where we have our other gun battery set up. So you can see why I wanted to lengthen the line here by using squares and cavalry and squares and then putting another battery here, because the moment these guys deploy in here, now they're in range of this battery. So really making use of the fact that we just have 2 artillery batteries. And temporarily, because I see the cavalry heading off to the right, I just want to bring an infantry square out here just to kind of block off this area and stop the cavalry from trying to get by, if that's what they're trying to do. So here we are back at Mundelsheim. Again, this is just maintenance mode at this point. You know, I really think a lot of the starch is, you know, I give the guard units a lot of credit. They keep trying to come forward. They're absolutely the bravest of the brave, but I think at this point, this is all they're going to do is come forward, set up in line, try and shoot it out with us, and we're always going to win that. You know, the most I'm doing here now is just keeping an eye on the skirmisher units, checking their fatigue, seeing if I have to cycle fresh units in or out. So, you know, we're getting there, but, you know, some of these guys are tired, the other units are fatigued, but we got a fresh unit right here. We can bring them up and recall the tired unit. Now, just to briefly touch on why I cycle constantly fresh skirmish units in and out, as opposed to just letting them get super fatigued. Well, it's because by doing that, I'm able to keep reusing the same skirmisher units over and over and over again. It basically turns into limitless manpower, because when you do that, you know, you cycle the old ones out, put new ones in, and keep doing that over and over again. The ones you cycled out will rejoin their unit and recover their fatigue, and you can then reuse them again. So as you can see now, a whole bunch of Austrian units are deploying. They're kicking out a lot of skirmishers. With no artillery and no cavalry around, we may have a chance to just do a headlong charge and see if we can just immediately knock a lot of this out of the way before the skirmishers can even get into position. This is why you don't come out without artillery or cavalry support, you know? So here we go, and see what we can get out of here. And yeah, we're just charging into this line here. See what we can break. See if we can break a lot of this up. Now, one of these units have formed square, and we do want to make sure we don't charge them. So I'm not going to pursue this charge. I'm going to basically make sure I don't hit that square. So we've knocked one unit out of the way, and as we pull this unit back here now we can see if we can charge. And here we go. Now we're charging headlong into this, and let's see if we can just knock a lot of this out of the way. Oh, no, they're retreating. But now our artillery has opened up. They're firing grape shot. And as soon as these guys come back, I may just try and hit that again. So this is really working out as good as we could have hoped in terms of the Austrians are trying to actually move towards the stronger part of our line, rather than around our left. And there is no cooperation between any of their forces right now. We have infantry over here. The cavalry is, I don't know what the hell the cavalry is doing. It's heading off to the right somewhere. But it's way out of position to do anything to help the infantry right now, and the infantry is just getting massacred between the cannon. I'm going to charge headlong into this right now and see if we can break this all up. There goes one line. There goes the other one. So, okay, we just immediately, with one squadron, very little of our own manpower. We've only lost 28 men from that squadron. You know, we've basically just rode down all of this infantry, and we will of course pull them back so they don't charge the square. You guys are probably saying, Rob, I thought you don't use that cavalry that way. Well, I mean, if they give me the chance, I'll use it that way. It's not how I prefer to use cavalry, but if you dangle that kind of carrot out in front of me, I'm gonna take it. So now I see that the enemy cavalry is kind of trying to move between the 15th and 17th divisions over here, and we're going to stop that right from happening. Because it's only cavalry, because their forces are not cooperating at all, it's not going to work. All I need to do is stick 1 or 2 squares out there, and it's not going to work. It'll stop the cavalry cold. You know, which is why I say this game is a lot more about formations and engagement distance control than it ever was about firepower. Look at all this cavalry, right? That looks like a big threat, but on its own, it's really not. You know, 1 or 2 squares blocking that approach to come between my 2 divisions is all it will take to stop them all. All right, so again, I'm just keeping the supply wagons runs going here with the. I'm just trying to really push this situation back and kind of diffuse this hotspot over here. You can see now all of the Württemberg troops have been pushed back across the river, and I'm hoping we're just about to really wrap up this situation over here, and I won't have to watch it as closely. And we could do a little skirmisher maintenance now that the Württemberg troops have pulled back. You can see we're still hitting them with grape shot, but things are becoming a little more frantic now. I'm having to bounce from spot to spot faster now because there's just more to watch, and it's happening faster now. So at this point, you know, believe me, when I was playing this, I was fully engaged. You know, when I spoke in the last part about how the scenario kept me on my toes basically the entire time, we're talking about right now. You know, I am scouring the whole line and trying to keep track of just a lot of things going on at once. Remember, all of these troops are TC. All of them are relying on me to keep them safe. They don't think for themselves. So this entire engagement at all 4 of these hotspots is completely under my control, which is the way I like to fight, but it is a lot to watch at this point. However, the fortress is doing an exceptional job. We have basically very quickly really broken up any kind of cohesion with the Austrian infantry. The cavalry is now starting to work its way across, but as you can see, I have a square out here, a square out here. For all intents and purposes, we have blocked the river. They cannot come between the 2 divisions, and with no infantry out here, these squares should be enough to hold them. However, you can see an Austrian battery has deployed in a good spot to start shelling both this square and this square. So we may have to eat some artillery fire. Now, the Mundelsheim area is being rather uncooperative, and it is not quieting down the way I had hoped it would. The Hessians here are just being very tenacious and continue to keep moving up and engaging my units. Not that they have a chance of pushing through this anymore, but they are forcing me to continue to pay attention to this position and pull my attention away from other spots. They're continuing to make me do supply wagon runs. They're continuing to make me cycle my skirmishers in and out. and just keep my attention over here when I really don't want it to be over here at this point. You know, I want to focus on the center more than anything because that's where the fighting is going to really develop in a few minutes. You know, the Austrians were dumb in their first approach. They just walked right up to it and paid the price. They will not be that dumb the second time around. So the cavalry is now approaching. And I'm going to begin advancing my squadrons. I have no intention of taking on a cavalry force that size with just 3 squadrons of cavalry. But I do want to make sure that anything else that tries to approach these squares, because I know the cavalry can't charge, they're going to have to stop. But if they start shifting infantry over, I want to make sure I can at least force them into square. But right now their infantry is all tied up over on the right here, on my left, and completely separated from their cavalry. And our artillery is just whipping them like dogs. So we're going to send a fresh skirmisher unit out to take the place of the one in front of this square. They've taken some losses. We're going to pull them back, let them recover. And I'm just making sure my cavalry is firmly behind the skirmisher screen here, so that they don't take any losses. Some of my skirmisher units are getting hit pretty hard because some of these units are pretty close, and the Austrians are using a lot of skirmisher units themselves, and they're also using bigger skirmisher units. They are probably kicking out skirmishers by a percentage and not by specific manpower groupings like I do. So they may have skirmisher units that are, 200 men. So in an attempt to maybe ease up some of the pressure on my skirmishers here, we'll see if we can start using some of my cavalry to run off some of these skirmishers, maybe get a crack at some of the line units, Alright, so this position I'm liking this a lot more. The Württemberg troops are really starting to pull back now. This position's cooling off. I probably will not have to watch it nearly as closely as I did a few minutes ago. The Württemberg guns are out of range. And this position is just going to be in maintenance mode, I feel like. Just keep cycling fresh skirmisher units in. If the Austrians haven't tried to charge across the river by now, I don't think they're going to. So just keep the guns in canister, keep the fresh skirmisher units out, and this position should be managed. So while we're transferring skirmishers, let's get a quick point total here. So, all right, this is working, guys. We are only about 700 points away from 10,000 points. We're very close to clipping a major victory. At this point, all of our close-range batteries are effectively using canister fire. So that's actually going to generate a ton of points for us outside of the objectives. So you can see this battery is engaged at close range. This battery is engaged at close range. The battery at Muldelsheim is still engaged at close range. The battery in the right salient is engaged at close range. So we actually have a lot of batteries generating points for us. And we still have an hour and a half to go. And as you can see, the mere approach of cavalry was enough. And I'm certainly not interested in running them off. I just want to give my skirmishers a reprieve from this. And the mere threat of cavalry was enough to cause them to pull back. Now, as you can see, the cavalry here that it was approaching, all this cavalry has been stopped cold because there's nothing but squares in front of them. So now they're starting to shift over here where maybe they can get more of a combined arms thing going. So over in here, this is going to have to be watched because the first thing the cavalry is going to try to do is to charge my skirmishers, get them out of there so that the squares are vulnerable to infantry and skirmisher fire as well as the artillery fire that is not too far away. So this is going to be the hot spot because now we are dealing with all three arms. They have artillery, cavalry, and infantry. So this is going to be okay because it's just infantry. Everything else is okay, but this is what we got to watch now. And over here. So we have stopped the cavalry from trying to push between the 15th and 17th divisions, but in so doing, we have basically built them a combined arms force right in here. They have everything in here. Cavalry, skirmishers, line infantry, artillery, it's all there. You know, now, I am better at the AI when it comes to doing this, playing this game, but I have a lot less to work with than they do. So it's going to be a challenge. And, okay, finally it looks like we're getting some sort of reprieve here at Mundelsheim. Things are really starting to quiet down. This latest Hessian advance has been almost completely driven back. And I'm just making sure, just doing one last skirmisher switcheroo here, get some of the tired units out while I have a pause, and then hopefully I will not have to watch this position too heavily. As I can tell, things in the center are about to get really busy. And I don't want to spend too much time here anymore. I'm looking at all these units, they're all kind of pulling back now, and I want to see what's going on in the center here. So all right, we're back to our hot spot here. And just want to make sure, keep all the skirmishers out front, keep the supply wagons going. Because right now I have the guns up close, and that is my biggest advantage. We're able to fire a lot of grape shot. So far my skirmishers out front are doing good. My squares are not taking too much of a beating. So far, everything's cool. We have stopped the cavalry in its tracks. And, all right. We really are doing great over here. You know, ideally, all I have to do at this point with the rest of these areas is just pop back and do some supply wagon runs and some skirmisher recalls, and hopefully I won't have to watch too much of what's going on here at all anymore. You know, again, in these big battles, the less you have to watch at once, the better. Now, I realize that this line unit here is actually taking losses from some of the Württemberg guns over here. So I'm gonna get them out of there. They haven't taken too many losses. They've taken 41 casualties, but it's enough for me to say, well, why would I just leave you there to continue taking losses for no reason? All right. Let's see what's going on back here again. All right, so the cavalry still is just gathering. They're not really doing anything yet. And it looks like our canister may be starting to break up some of this. Some of it's starting to pull back. So again, these line units have come forward and want to shoot it out with my skirmishers. And I'm actually going to take this big skirmisher unit here, 180 men. It's a battalion that's in skirmish formation, and see if I can actually just lock down this position from my squares to the river, and see if we can get some firing going on these guys with skirmishers. Because I actually want to get one of those squares out of there and bring it over here, because we're a little thin over here. That's a small square. There's really, you know, I'm not holding this back with much at this point, so I'd like to get another unit out here to become either a square or a source of skirmishers. All right, so here comes the cavalry. This is usually the first plan of attack here. All right, we want to get the skirmishers out of here. They're eating grape shot, but nope, not this time. So you can see the artillery was a big discouragement to that cavalry coming forward. But nonetheless, there's lots of other cavalry out here. They're going to want to get these skirmishers out of here because that will make it much more advantageous for these skirmishers to be able to shoot at these squares. Just like we're doing at Mundelsheim, squares are an enormous disadvantage when shooting against skirmishers. We're covering that by having skirmishers out in front of our squares. But now with cavalry up here, those skirmishers are in a tenuative position. And they just will not give up on this Mundelsheim area. They keep making me come back to pay attention to it. And it's a smart tactic. You know, they're not going to win over here, but they're pulling my attention back over here. You know, forcing me to, again, spread my attention amongst a bunch of different areas rather than being able to focus on one or two. You know, and we keep knocking these attacks back, but as long as they keep doing this, I keep having to pay attention to the area. I keep having to cycle in fresh skirmisher units like we're doing now. I keep having to refill with caissons on the guns, and just keep paying attention to the area. So with each one of these knockbacks that happen here are becoming faster and faster, and sooner or later it just won't even be viable for them to advance at all. But this is what I really want to pay attention to right now. So, see, they pulled my attention away, and this unit charged this unit and got them out of there. And I was over at Mundelsheim, so I didn't see it. But this unit is now retreating, so maybe I can bring those skirmishers back. And that's why I say it's paying attention to a bunch of different areas, isolated areas of action at one time. Even for me, when it's this many areas, can be a challenge. And all right, we have crossed 10,000 points just by a couple of feet so far. We're 83 points over, but we now have enough points for a major victory. And we have an hour and 15 minutes left to try and keep increasing our lead and holding this combined arms force at bay here with the fortress. So far, it's doing a great job. It's the fortress, you know, it usually does. And as you can see, the Austrians, while they do have 3 batteries of artillery, as opposed to our basically 1.5, we have 1 heavy battery over here and then a horse battery over here. You know, only 1 battery is really deployed close enough to make any difference, and it looks like they're actually trying to move them closer, which I'm not at all happy about. This looks like their cavalry, their horse battery. It looks to me like their horse battery has 8 guns. But as you can see, we're still peppering these skirmishers with canister fire. You can see here comes the cavalry. Let's see if our guns can discourage this yet again. If not, we will recall the skirmishers, and this square will be safe for now because these... Yep, there we go. Nope. No thanks. So they have aborted their charge. They are taking some canister for parting gifts. Thanks for coming. Please come again. And our skirmishers get to remain in place. And now we've driven back these skirmishers, so our skirmishers get a rest. They get a reprieve. And you can see that even against a combined arms force, what are you bozos? You can't do this. Yes, no. They just lost an artilleryman right here. You can't just blitz forward with artillery, dummies. The guns are smarter than the officer, though. They know better. They turn around. All right, so we brought another unit over from our extreme left, so now we have a source of skirmishers if we need it. Maybe we can replace that really thin square with that unit instead. All right, so all of Mundelsheim has pulled back now. Whew. Can we get a break? Can we get a reprieve? Hopefully this will all quiet down and I really will not have to watch this anymore, because that center is really heating up, and every second I take my eyes off of it, a cavalry unit could be charging my skirmishers, and I'm not seeing it, you know? So I don't want to be away from that central area at this point any more than I absolutely have to. Especially when I hear grape shot like that, I know something's going on, so I immediately want to pop back there. I'm just going to grab the supply wagon. I want to get them heading over to the center just to resupply the left battery. But I'm rushing over here because I hear grape shot. I want to know what the heck's going on. And it looks like we're just decimating some of these skirmishers in the middle here with this battery right here. But let's keep the supply wagons going. We're also hitting this unit with grape shot, and we're just racking up huge points for this too. So now we have a lot of cavalry building up on our right here. This skirmisher unit is in real danger of being charged. Sooner or later, one of these cavalry units is going to charge them and get through. So this is a very small unit here, and I'm looking to maybe replace them with this unit, get a more solid unit out there, and get this unit back. That's going to be tricky to do right in front of a huge cavalry force. So I'm actually going to move the square up behind this unit, deploy them right in position on top of them, and then pull this unit back. Because I have to do this all while they're basically, in range to be charged. So I need to do this and be ready to form square at a moment's notice, the moment the cavalry decides maybe we'll charge. But the majority of what we're doing here really comes down to what it always comes down to here: artillery. Close range, unrelenting, ongoing canister fire. There is no better way to generate points outside of, objectives than close range artillery fire. So, okay, looks like we're triggering this unit into square. They have formed square, no doubt due to this cavalry squadron right here. They're in their battalion mass formation. Again, the Austrians are just kicking out a storm of skirmisher units, all of them probably bigger than mine. So we're really relying on our artillery to take care of those skirmishers, because one-on-one in a firefight, our skirmishers are probably not a match for them. Ours are not as big. We kick out smaller ones so that we can kick out more of them. And we are continuing to pound away on this unit. They're getting triggered into and out of square as a result of this cavalry. And our artillery is just messing them up. There they go. They're right on the border. They're like probably 200 yards away from the squadron. So they're kind of just right on the border of being able to be triggered in and out of square like that. That's actually really cool for us, because while they're moving in and out of formations like that, they can't fire, they can't do anything. They're just changing in and out of formations, and they're vulnerable. So, all right, we're going to try and pull a quick switcheroo here. This is really gutsy to just try and pull a switcheroo like this right under the nose of enemy cavalry and just try and swap squares. I would say I'm showing some disrespect to the AI there in doing that. That's disrespectful to just try and swap squares right out from under the nose of enemy cavalry sitting 150 yards away from you. And all right, just doing some more skirmisher swapping here. We got a fresh unit coming in. And you can see this is how quickly these units actually get tired. We only switched this unit, maybe a half an hour ago. And they're already exhausted. So, you know, that's what I was talking about by the Austrians using a lot more skirmishers. They're forcing me to cycle skirmisher units in and out at a much quicker rate. And I want to resupply this battery in the left salient just because I haven't resupplied them basically at all yet during this playthrough, and I'm sure even on shell they're starting to run a little low. So the fortress is just having a field day out here. And their cavalry is running around back here. They're in grape shot range, but our guns are continuing to pulverize this line. They're continuing to be triggered in and out of square. It's a real problem for them. They're just basically taking losses. Now this could be a problem. This is a full-out charge. They're breaking formation. This skirmish unit is probably going to have to get the heck out of here. We're going to recall them to at least make the cavalry lose their charge. All right. Now they're in grape shot range. The square can target them. We're dealing with the same thing here. This is not a charge yet. This is just moving it double quick. Now it's broken into a charge. We're going to have to recall them. Out they go. But now they're stuck out there. They're going to get shot at by the squares. Maybe we can hit them with some grape shot. And you know, play this. This is an old game I play with enemy cavalry. They're going to be forced to retreat. And what will I do? I will immediately kick out fresh skirmish units and put them in front of these squares again and force them to do the same thing over and over again. If you want to get rid of my skirmishers, you're going to have to spend cavalry to do it. You're going to have to use up those charges. And I am just trying to basically link up the 15th and 17th divisions and really seal this off, this avenue of approach off for the enemy cavalry here. Now over here, I'm not so worried about putting skirmishers out here because there's no infantry to shoot at the squares, it's just cavalry. I want to get these guys screened, so I'm going to kick out some skirmishers and I immediately want to get them back out here in these hedgerows to shield this square from these skirmish units. I'm not so worried about this unit here because this unit just keeps getting triggered in and out of square. They're not much of a threat. They're not really doing too much firing because they just go back and forth between square and line because of their proximity to my cavalry. Now I'm building this unit's strength up because as I recall skirmisher units, it's thickening up that square. So that square will be a little bit more, a little stronger now, and really be able to lock this off to any kind of Austrian breakthrough through here. As you can see, we have almost completely linked up our positions here, and we have some guns that are completely out of canister and have fallen off the line. It's a lot to watch, you know. It's just a lot to watch. So these are presumably all from this battery, and yeah, two guns of this battery have fallen off the line, and here they come. This is from some other battery. I need to find out who. Probably the one in the right salient. You know, so I have to get those guns back up into position and then resupply them. And you know, there's still a lot of forces out here. You know, I want all my guns on the line. Alright, so we're continuing to trigger that square in and out. Let's see how our skirmishers are doing over here. They're doing okay. They're outnumbered, but they're far enough away that they're doing okay. And we're close enough that our canister is still firing away at them. So now with this thick square out here and this position basically locked off, we can pull this unit back and have a couple of units back here as reserves to kick out skirmishers from. Now, our batteries are, I mean, our squares are taking losses from this Austrian cannon back here. We're gonna let that ride for now. We're gonna take the losses. We got 500 men, and it's not canister fire; it's just shell. Those squares are doing important work in blocking the cavalry from getting between the 15th and 17th Division. I don't have anything else to spare. I can't get to their enemy artillery to stop it. We're just gonna have to let that rock for now. And while I'm bringing up the guns, guys, I'm going to make a quick fridge run. I will be right back. Alright guys, I am back, and here we go, right time to hop back to the center here and see what's going on. So, alright, we are still triggering that unit in it. They're getting decimated. Look at that. That's not a line anymore. That's a semblance of a line. So our artillery has really just decimated. You can see we've gained another almost 2,000 points, and a lot of that is just due to our batteries. We are at 11,700 points, and the fortress again is showing how deadly it can be. As our artillery has just been blazing away non-stop now for at least a half an hour, earning tremendous points. And I'm going to move this unit back behind this square and assault column as a reserve. And finally things seem like they are permanently cooled off here over here at Mundelsheim. Doesn't look like I'm going to have to really pay attention to this area. They're all sitting out there. They're done. So that defense worked out perfectly. They never were able to breach our lines. And we now have our left locked off on the river here, tenuously. It's just a skirmisher unit, but nevertheless, we have anchored ourselves on the river there. Our skirmishers are continuing to do okay. And at last, I finally feel like I'm starting to get a handle on the situation in terms of it's just not so frantic anymore. It's starting to calm down a little bit. You know, I can start to focus on things like resupplying my batteries and resupplying individual guns that have run out of ammo. You know, it's cooling off even in the center a little bit. And this is nothing over here. This is just a skirmish unit tangling with a line unit at extreme range. 130 yards. Nothing's going to come of this. And now that we have resupplied the left battery, we can bring the supply wagon back and hopefully get back to this battery in time for its stray gun to come up. Okay, so these guys have pulled back now. Their morale took a bit of a hit from the losses they took from those Württemberg troops. Just want to make sure they don't take any more. Here comes our stray gun that is out of ammo. So hopefully it will reach the battery around the same time the supply wagon does. And we will be able to resupply them. So, okay, here come, what have I done here? This was obviously a misclick. And I have to get this, how did this line unit get over here? Run, boys, run! Run! Obviously I misclicked something. Oh my goodness. And they are going to get charged. Run, boys, run. So, more important than anything, save the guns. Now, luckily, the cavalry is charging the infantry. So I do not think they actually got any of my guns. But more important than anything when this happens, and this was not an error this is not a problem with the fortress. I misclicked. Obviously, I misclicked that unit, and I caused the problem. I'm going to quickly stop the situation by forming a square in here so that no follow-up charges can come through and get through to the guns. And then when this cools off over here, then I can figure out what I'm going to do with the guns. So I may have to move the guns over here. So yes, no losses to the guns. We did not lose any cannon. So we can immediately begin to reassess the situation here. These guys will have to rest. They got charged, but this is blocked off now. The cavalry can do nothing. They can charge my skirmisher unit, but we'll recall them, and they lose their charge. And there doesn't appear to be too much infantry out here anymore. Yeah, so that wasn't a problem with the fortress. That was, I gave the cavalry a target, because obviously I misclicked that unit somehow and brought them forward, and gave the cavalry a target. So that they were charging that target, and their charge actually brought them within the fortress. So I had to get the guns, I had to save the guns more than anything. The most important thing, if a unit gets charged, fine, whatever, it happens. Save the guns. The guns are the most important thing because they're your biggest point generators. Will you guys give it a rest over here? What are you really going to do at this point? These guard level units do not know the meaning of the word done. Look at your boys in the 2nd Brigade all sitting back there. They know what they're doing. They're done. They've had it. Alright, so now we got to figure out where we can place these guns and make it work. So with the cavalry pulled back now, maybe I can sidle this square over here and just open up a new fortress right here. And we'll just move this square over to close in on the guns here. Move this square over, and we've just opened up a new fortress right here. Now, it doesn't need to be a super duper fortress because there's nothing but cavalry out there right now, and the squares alone are enough. This isn't really combined arms we're dealing with over here anymore, it's just cavalry. And as you can see, we're taking a couple of losses from the cannon. Just going to pull the cavalry back now. How are we doing? Nearly 12,000 points. We're at 11,990 points. We haven't even taken 1,000 losses yet. We've inflicted 8,300 losses on the enemy. Just a total massacre. Alright, so we have moved the squares over, we have opened up a new field of fire for the cannon, and let's see if we can get to work on some of this cavalry out here. I'm just going to shift the guns over just a little bit. Run the supply wagon by them, top them off with ammo, and see if we can begin picking away at that cavalry out there. And I'm hoping this peters out real quick. There they go. So even a guard unit at this point doesn't have much left in them. As you can see, things have really quieted up over here. Nothing but cannon going off. I don't hear any musket fire. We do need to get the supply wagon over to the guns. There's that other gun. They want to run away again because they're out of canister and I need to resupply them. Yep, they're pulling back. So I'm going to try and intercept them. And things are really cooling off at this left salient. And I'm thinking now, what if I can actually start to recall some of these skirmishers from the extreme left and make myself another battalion and reinforce the center a little bit with units from the 15th Division. Because this is the only area of kind of serious fighting still going on. The Austrians still have a lot of skirmishers out there. They're not as aggressive as they were, you know, at the beginning, but it's still a combined arms force out here. And you can see the left salient is not really being pressed at all anymore. This battalion has completely pulled back. So I'm going to begin stripping some forces from this area because it really needs just a minimal complement now because everything's going on over here on the right. You know, and even that is starting to quiet down. You can see a lot of the Austrian dead on the ground. A lot of their skirmishers have pulled back. We're mostly tangling with line units now. This is completely cooled off. I'm just moving this battalion forward to basically get it out of the way so I can get the supply wagon over to this gun that needs to be resupplied and make sure they actually resupply. Alright, so they're recovering. They're not taking any more losses. No losses. They've taken 7. Nothing big. Probably artillery fire. And a big mass of skirmishers out here, but they're really not coming in such a close range that they're really causing much problem for me and my skirmishers. You know? They're getting tired, and I don't really have anything over here to pull from to make new skirmisher units. These guys are out of ammo. I'm actually going to have to resupply these skirmisher units because I don't really have anything over here to pull from to cycle fresh ones in and out. So I'm just going to have to actually manually resupply them. So we'll do a quick run with the supply wagon right up the line here. Refill, top off these skirmisher units. See, we got a broken Austrian unit back here. Alright, cavalry, what are you doing over here? You're coming forward? There's nothing but squares in front of you. I don't know what you're going to do. You're just going to put yourself in grape shot range. Alright, so we've passed 12,000 points now. We've got that is a nice, comfortable lead. And as you can see, we've already started unloading grape shot into those into that cavalry squadron that's advancing. And the last gasp of life from the Hessians over here. They've got one skirmisher unit out here engaging us. So this battery racked up nearly 1,000 points just on its own. So our squares are continuing to get peppered with from Austrian artillery, but there's really nothing we can do about it right now. Their guns are all pretty safe all the way back there. We're just going to have to sit there and take it because those squares are necessary to block the cavalry from coming between our two positions here at Souffel and at the Stone Bridge. And the losses that those squares are taking are nothing compared to the losses our artillery are inflicting. So, you know, we can afford to eat them. You can see we're still gaining in points very easily. Some of our guns are now diverting their attention, you can see, over to shooting at the Württemberg troops down there. But we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guns focusing on the Austrian, which is plenty. You know, I always let the guns remain under AI control and determine their own targets. Oh, that skirmish unit is completely exhausted. Need to get them out of there. So things are really starting to settle down over here. The Austrians are really no longer trying to advance and overtake the position. They're just kind of standing in front of it, and we can rock that all day long. You know, they pulled back out of canister range, but you know, we have enough points to win at this point. So if we can just maintain a nice status quo, you know, at this point I had been playing for over 3 hours at this point. So, you know, even I'm at this point, you know, getting a little mentally fatigued. So I'm happy to not antagonize the enemy any more than I have to, and just kind of maintain my position and let things run their course. Because things were frantic there during the middle part of the scenario for quite a while, you know, between all the flare-ups at Mundelsheim, at Souffel-Wiersheim, at the blown bridge on our right, you know, and then again I had to deal with the center, so it was a lot to deal with for a prolonged period of time. So, you know, and while I was playing, I thought the scenario was 5 hours long, so I still think I have almost another 2 hours to go here. So I'm trying to pace myself. You know, because in the scenario description, it said the scenario was 5 hours long. And it wasn't until playing the scenario and coming to the end that I actually found out it was only 4 hours long. So at this point, I still think it's 5 hours long, and I still have almost, you know, an hour and 45 minutes to go. And I've already dealt with a lot, and, you know, mentally speaking, I'm starting to get kind of fatigued. Still real quiet over here at Mundelsheim now. We're just shooting it out with a Hessian skirmisher unit. Nothing really go crazy going on anymore. We never really had to use any of our main forces, just skirmishers and artillery. That's all we really used. And we're continuing to bomb away on this cluster of Austrian cavalry out here, as well as this cluster of skirmishers out here. And they come forward and they get blown back, and they come forward and they get blown back, and I'm happy to just keep maintaining that. So that horse battery has racked up 1,200 points. They have done good work. And this battery as well, 1,200 points. They've only taken one artilleryman loss. They're doing great. These guys weren't that heavily engaged. They still racked up 230 some points. How about these guys? These guys actually fired a lot of canister. Probably have to wait for that infantry unit to pass before I can re-click and get the supply wagon to advance on that last caisson. How about these? Oh my goodness! 1,800 points for that battery. I think you guys win the medal for this battle. I don't know what unit that skirmish unit is part of, but we'll just leave them sitting there, I guess. Or maybe we can use them to just replace a worn out unit. I'll bring them up to the front here, and you know, if we need to replace a worn out unit, we can just use those guys because they haven't been engaged at all. Again with these guns falling off the line. So we'll bring them back up, resupply them. And they're continuing to rack up points. 1,220 points now. They're continuing to land hits. So, you know, with some of these artillery scores that we've seen, you got to figure that, you know, at least 4,000 or 5,000 of our points have come purely from the artillery scores. And these guns are starting to get tired. I can't say I blame them. They've done a lot of work. And you know, that does have an effect on the guns. As the guns themselves, as their fatigue drops, their rate of fire, their reload times and such will increase. You know, they will take longer to shoot. So you'll start hearing the rate of artillery fire just kind of slow down as the guns get more tired. And there is our brigade commander, Gadan. Look at these guns, continuing to fall back, and I'm just going to actually click on the resupply button here and just manually resupply them. So I have to wait till they retreat. They'll fall back. they won't resupply for some reason, so I'm going to actually manually resupply the guns by having them, by clicking the resupply button, they'll go to the nearest supply wagon and resupply manually. And I will TC those guns for now, so that they can no longer just voluntarily retreat like this. It's annoying me. So I'll TC them, manually make them go resupply, put them back on the line, and then I'll put them under AI control again. And as you can see, now even the center here has really started to cool off. And barring that one stupid misclick I did that almost threatened one of my batteries, this defense worked out impeccably. We stopped them cold pretty much as soon as they crossed the river. You know, it didn't help that they went bumbling across the river at full speed with their infantry and just tried to run headlong into the fortress. They really wasted a lot of their potential attack power by not waiting for their cavalry to come up and not waiting for their artillery to come forward and deploy and potentially try and soften the fortress up a little bit. You know, so they squandered their infantry almost right at the outset before their other arms really had a chance to do anything. You know, by the time even some of their cavalry was and artillery was just making it across the river, I had already, you know, unleashed 2 or 3 cavalry charges that basically broke up their whole infantry clusters. You know, and sent a lot of them running back and really squandered a lot of their attack power. You know, as I demonstrated in my French playthrough of the full Battle of Waterloo, I think in part 4 of that series, where it was the Prussians who were advancing on that ring of fortresses that I set up from Plassenois all the way up to, you know, the Papillote area, and the same thing basically happened to them. You know, they just walked up to a fortress and got their heads handed to them as a result. You can't do that. And I can see that everything is nice and quiet at Mundelsheim. We're really just still tangling with that one skirmish unit out there. They look like they're getting whittled down to just about nothing. I'm sure they're going to break and run soon, and I do not expect to see anything occur after that. I'm pretty much hoping all of these units have had it, and they're done. You know, but now that things have cooled off in the center, I'm a little more relaxed, and I'm not as worried about what's going on there, and I'm more free to kind of scout around the battlefield and kind of check out what's going on. You can see that the Austrians really made bad use of their artillery, deployed it on the other side of the river, too far away to really do any good. And our squares are still doing fine over here. Some of these squares have taken some artillery losses. It is what it is. We've only got a half hour to go. I'm willing to stand there and take it. You guys are facing the wrong way, but you've recovered nicely. That's a usable unit again. Boy, some of these skirmishers out here are just plain exhausted. Just dead tired. But they're not being threatened too heavily right now. And I'm hoping at this point that, you know, with only a half hour left, you know, again, I thought it was an hour and a half, but now I know it's a half hour, but with nothing really going on over there, I'm just hoping that they can just kind of stand there and just kind of wait out the end of this. So here comes some more cavalry. Now, they're moving forward, so I'm not immediately going to move this skirmisher unit forward. What I want to do with them is put them out here, and you can see a group of skirmishers out here, and I kind of want to protect the square with them. But with this cavalry squadron that just moved out here, I want to wait. Wait and see if I can get them to pull back. That was another misclick. I didn't mean to move them. But luckily this cavalry is not doing anything, so we'll just form square. Here they come. Have some grape shot while you're at it. So now they've moved their cavalry out behind their skirmishers, and they've moved their skirmishers into position to shoot at this square, so I cannot move my skirmishers out in front of the square because their cavalry's right there. Oop, but now their cavalry's pulling back. So maybe I can do it. So yeah, they're retreating. Maybe I can take the skirmisher unit and just kind of... So I'm splitting off another skirmisher unit here. Maybe I want to screen both of these squares. So nearly 13,000 points. We're continuing to increase our lead. And I really just want to hold on and maintain here. Alright, so now these two guns have moved up and resupplied. I'm going to take all the guns off of TC and just reform the line. And we will do a supply wagon run and top off the rest of this battery. And they are, okay, they are unlimbering, and they are unlimbering. Alright, so those two, our battery is back at full strength. And these guys have had it. They're heading back to Berlin, or wherever they came from. And the right salient is pretty safe. Or the left salient, sorry. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and get this skirmisher unit out into these hedgerows here, defensive terrain bonus, and we'll screen this square. And you can see this square is starting to take some losses from these skirmishers too. I'm probably going to take this skirmisher unit and place them out in front of this square. They'll be in danger of being charged by the cavalry, but I'm okay with making it's a temporary reprieve for the square. And, you know, if the cavalry charges, I'll just recall the skirmishers. And we'll play that game again. So as predicted, as soon as I started moving these skirmishers out, the enemy cavalry is moving forward. We're probably going to have to recall those skirmishers. Here they come. Head full of steam, racing towards my skirmishers. Maybe we can get some grape shot out of this, though. And they are now breaking into a full charge, but we are getting our grape shot off on them. Give us our points. And we recall them, stop them in their tracks. The charge is lost. Let's hit them with some grape shot while they're still stuck out there. You can hear it ringing out. And there they go. Off they go, leaving some horsies on the ground. And yeah, we'll just do it again. Split them off, put them back out there, and you know, just keep making them do that. Keep making them send their cavalry forward. Keep making them take grape shot losses. And wasting their charges. Anything popping back over here? Again, another unit has moved forward, but they're again shooting at long range, 140 yards. Nothing to worry about. How these guns doing? Everything looks good. Yeah, they're shooting at us, but we're not even engaged. We're not even shooting back at them. Obviously, that's how much respect we have for them. And, 1,838 points. I believe that battery is the gold star winners for this battle. And there's the artillery reserve commander, Rottenberg, holding on to the objective. And here is Rapp, and we have 13,100 points. Continue to increase our lead. We've inflicted almost 9,000 casualties on the enemy. We've taken 1,200 casualties ourselves. A really lopsided engagement here. And as you can see, the Austrians have kicked out a number of skirmish units. I see at least 3 out here. We're going to go ahead and screen the square again to prevent them from taking losses from the skirmishers. They will probably be charged by the cavalry. And as you can see, the cavalry has run off our skirmisher units that were out in front of this square. No problem, we'll kick out more. And now they're coming for this one. They're trying to... This is smart. They're trying to clear out the skirmishers to make their skirmisher fire much more effective against our squares. And now they're doing it at multiple points. So now the squadron will pull back, but now we have to go and rescreen all of these squares. So we'll kick out another one. And we're not going to bring them forward yet because this cavalry is still out here being really rambunctious. This is a square, guys. You can't charge them. That's a no-no. And you don't want to charge these skirmishers because I guarantee you my cavalry squadron is a lot fresher than you are. So we're just waiting for these guys to run off so we can rescreen our squares. These guys are doing nothing. Oh, they're doing nothing because our skirmishers, I guess, are out of ammo. Well, maybe I need to. Yeah, I'm gonna send this supply wagon over here to resupply them. That would probably explain why they're not shooting. So here they come. And again, we'll just recall them. Really making that cavalry tucker itself out. And slowly but surely you can see that this part of the line is starting to break down. They've only got one skirmisher out here now. They're not even shooting, they're just standing there. They're actually pulling back some of their skirmishers, so screening these squares immediately becomes less immediate of a thing. If there's no skirmishers out here to shoot at the squares, the squares don't need to be screened with skirmishers. And yeah, they have one unit out here right now, but they're far away. And I believe this line unit has had it as well. And the whole right is basically just collapsing here. Now our squares over here are taking a lot of artillery losses, but in the interest of holding all this cavalry in check, we're just going to leave it because it's nothing compared to the amount of losses we've inflicted. You know, 9,000 versus, 1,200. This was an absolute massacre. So alright, with the cavalry now pulling back, we can take the skirmish unit, plop them in front of that square that's still tangling with the skirmishers. We'll just recall these guys. They're not really needed. We'll reintegrate them into this line unit. Kick out a fresh unit. Probably put them in front of this square. And again, challenge their cavalry to come forward and waste charges on clearing off skirmishers. Oh, and have we finally seen an end to all action at Mundelsheim? I hope so. Everything looks quiet. The skirmishers are gone. The Hessians, you can almost see the defeat in their eyes. You can see they have some broken units way back there. Back by Lampertheim. And now our skirmishers have engaged. Now they just needed some musket balls to shoot. That's all they were waiting for. 1,840 points for that battery. And how's our forwardmost skirmisher unit doing here? They must be getting pooped again. No, they're okay. They're still okay. These guys are starting to get a little winded, but they're alright. And these guys are good. They're just resting. Nobody's engaging them at the moment. So yeah, the action is really starting to slow down now. Little by little, the fight is being drained from the Austrian. Well, these guys are really low on ammo. They've only got 3 rounds left. So maybe I'll just siphon one of these units that haven't been engaged at all. We have a lot of skirmish units out here that we can actually just start moving around to engage what's left of the Austrians over here and pull away some of these skirmish units that are very low on ammo. So these guys are completely fresh. We'll just double click them over, and we'll just shift this skirmish unit over, or maybe we'll recall them. These guys are down to 3 rounds. Alright, and we're continuing to shoot it out now. The cavalry is out there now, but they look a lot more tentative than they did before. They're not moving around as much. Let's see if they want to tangle with some more skirmisher units. Oh, look at this. Look at this. A Austrian cavalry squadron has gone and siphoned itself over to the right side of the line. So let's see, are they going to try and take out these skirmishers? Looks like it to me. Oh, nope. False alarm. Bye, guys. Here comes another fresh group of Austrian skirmishers. And continuing to gain points, not as fast as we were before, but we're well ahead of what we need for a major victory now. We're over 3,000 points ahead. Obviously, with the Austrians largely moving out of canister range of all of our batteries, points are not going to be accrued quite as fast. We're still gaining 100 points here and there. As long as we keep our guns in supply, they'll continue to rack up points for us here and there. So now I'm really challenging this Austrian cavalry by continuing to put out skirmishers in front of my squares, and basically saying, "Come and get me. We'll play this all day long." You keep chasing us off, we'll keep putting new ones out there. And at some point, they got to be tired of doing that. It's just not netting them anything. See some more skirmishers pulling back. I don't even need to click over here anymore. I can see that the units have disengaged. And these guys have moved off. I don't know what they're doing. They look like they're trying to move off to the right. I can see that coming a mile away. If we need to just refuse our position over here a little bit, no problem. Yeah, so it really looks to me like the Austrians have all but given up here on making any further serious attempts at trying to overrun this position. And Dolazan's brigade has basically about broken even. They're a tiny bit ahead on points, but you know, they've lost almost as many men as they've killed. As I said before, the whole point of the fortress is about artillery scores, not really anybody else. And our artillery scores are insane. All of these batteries are over 1,000 points each. You know, the entire division is nearly 1,000 points ahead just on its own. And, okay, they've disengaged. They've pulled back. They're 189 yards away, out of musket range. So this area has basically completely quieted down. So all we're really watching now is the center and the right salient here. And our skirmishers are still continuing to do well. Our artillery's doing well, but the pace of the battle has slowed down drastically at this point. And at this point I was saying to myself, well, I hope I have a nice quiet hour of this battle. Little did I know that I only have 15 minutes left. And, okay, these guys are getting pooped, but here's that fresh skirmisher unit we brought up from the right riverside here, over here, and we can just swap them in and out. So you can see the cavalry is actually a lot more reluctant to come forward and run off these skirmishers now. They've done it a whole bunch of times, and I think they are starting to be out of gas. They're starting to question what's the point of even doing that. You bring them right back up. Now we got to watch this cavalry squadron out here. They were turned back once, but they continue to keep coming forward, and sooner or later they will recover enough fatigue that they might be able to charge these skirmishers again, and it looks like they are again making another break for them. So let's see what happens here. Now this is just double clicking. When I see the formation break, that's how I'll know if they're really going to charge. So nope, see, so far they've just moved up. And now they got to decide whether they want to actually charge them or pull back. If they pull back, we just stay the way they are, the way we are. And they are inching forward here. Let's see if they break into a charge. And I am ready to recall these guys. Yep, they are breaking into a charge. And they're eating some grape shot on the way in. Love it. And we will, of course, recall these skirmishers, take away the charge, and they're sitting right there in front of this battery in this square now. Let them go. Let her rip, guys. Let them have it. So the squares immediately opened up on them. And they are quite rightly pulling back. And have a canister shot as a parting gift. Please come again. And this unit has broken. This is like the third, fourth time this unit has broken now. Maybe we've gotten lucky and routed them at this point. That could very well be a rout. Those guys look like they're running full steam ahead. And still want to keep an eye on this cavalry out here. There's no more skirmishers for them to charge, but just want to make sure they don't go trying to charge the far left part of my line. So all is quiet over here on the extreme right. You know, now all I'm really doing is just occasionally doing supply wagon runs. Nothing going on in Mundelsheim. It's all shut down here. Again, just a supply wagon run, just to keep the guns firing. They'll earn us whatever points they're going to earn us. There's still enemy units out there they can hit, so we'll keep letting them fire. So another skirmisher unit coming forward. And we are triggering this unit into square with our cavalry back here. Oh, so now this unit has broken as well. This is definitely a rout. These guys are running towards Mundelsheim now. So maybe we can actually start to withdraw this part of the line and form them into a battalion, and then we can use them to screen skirmishers, because this looks like it's completely collapsed now. I think those two units have routed. And about halfway to 14,000 points there. We're at about 13,700. Way ahead of what we need for a major victory. Alright, so now we're making a battalion. We're recalling all the skirmishers that were separated from this battalion. We'll pull them back behind this square here, maybe. And we can be able to use them as a source of skirmishers, because the whole right part of their line now has looked like it's pretty much collapsed. And I love when this happens, when they come just in range where they're getting triggered back and forth between line and square. They're completely vulnerable to artillery and skirmisher fire while they're doing that. These guys are broken. You can see they have not retreated and reformed, so they're done as well. So as I said, this whole right part of the line is pretty much over with, and we can recall this whole anchor on the river here. And I can also bring this squadron out over here where I might need them more, so that they no longer need to be out there. And, okay, now we can finally replace these guys. I wanted to do that before. We'll bring them right up into the same position these other skirmisher units are, and we'll do the same switcheroo. They are really tired now. They are weary. And we will get them out of there and let them rest. So here comes our relief. Run into position, fellas. And okay, we can recall these guys, get them out of there. Nap time for you guys. You guys have earned it. Go back and get yourself a coffee and a croissant. So even without those 3 objectives, we were able to get well clear of 10,000 points. And we're so far ahead now that we don't really need to worry about accruing any more drastic amounts of points. We can just sit here and kind of maintain the stalemate here. So look at this cavalry continuing to try and come forward, but I mean, fellas, really? You can't charge those skirmishers, because if you do, my very fresh cavalry squadron that's just been sitting back there the whole time is going to countercharge you. And that would probably be the end of them, yeah, and they thought better of it. Smart move, boys, smart move. So you can see this unit is completely broken. And you can see the units that ran off towards Lampertheim here have surrendered. They ran headlong into my my troops at Mundelsheim here, and all of the action is completely shut down here. This area is done. And again, we're continuing to keep this unit in square. They're going in and out of it. We routed that cavalry. They're done. Bye, guys. So now our left is completely safe. No more rogue cavalry squadrons. The rest of this cavalry has seemed like they're just happy to sit out the rest of this fight. And again, we continue to trigger this unit in and out of, that's all they're doing. They're not shooting, they're just forming line, then forming square. You know, they're just at that outermost distance where that's all that happens. Every time they form what's basically happening is when they form square, they say, oh, we're out of range of the cavalry, so we can form line. And then they form line and they say, oh, well, we're within range of the cavalry, so we have to form square. And that's how you keep getting them to trigger in and out of square like that. So it looks like finally things have calmed down to the point where I probably felt it was time for a fridge break. As the camera has just come to a complete rest here, so I am no doubt not at the screen at the moment. And I'm back. And yeah, these squares are getting pooped. They've taken some losses, but on the whole, they held up pretty well, considering that they were just basically being bombed away on by enemy artillery. But they did the most important work of holding all this cavalry back across the river where they could do no good. I mean, all of these cavalry squadrons basically went to waste. They weren't used. All right, so with the left salient basically completely quiet, I want to try and counter some of this artillery by bringing over the left salient battery to this position and kind of setting them up in here. That's what I'm thinking right now. Now, bear in mind, I don't know there's only 4 minutes left in the scenario at this point. This is never going to happen. It'll take them that long just to get over here. But at this point, I thought I still had an hour left. I thought the scenario was 5 hours long. So that's why I'm doing this. I want to relieve some of the pressure that these squares are taking damage purely from this massed battery of artillery back here on the rise back here. So I want to bring my heavy guns over here to start making them pay the price for that and say, look, if you're going to do that, I'm going to start blowing your cavalry to pieces. And that was what I was thinking. But again, I don't have that kind of time left. There's only 3 minutes left, and I didn't know that because this was the first time I played this scenario. So, I'm thinking I still have a good hour left, and I can bring this battery over and just start massacring all these squadrons back here. So that's what I was thinking doing this. And you can see I'm actually repositioning the squares now to set that up. I'm bringing that battery over. The left salient is completely quiet at this point. I can afford to strip that battery away and put them to better use over here. But unfortunately, you're not going to see any of that because there is in fact no time left. As we're into the final 2 minutes of the scenario. But again, I didn't know that while I was actually playing the scenario. I thought we were going to 8 o'clock at night, not 7 o'clock. So that looked like a good opportunity to me to start getting some revenge for what those batteries had done to my squares and start blasting their cavalry to pieces, now that the left salient has gone completely silent. So I've opened up the squares here. The guns are coming, but there isn't enough time. They're not going to get here. Nothing going on. All these units are gone. There's just a skirmisher unit in front. I got plenty of skirmishers here to tangle with them. So we do not need that gun battery here anymore. And I would have liked to have gotten revenge for those squares. I certainly would have had the scenario continued. Those cavalry squadrons were ripe for the plucking. And at this point, I'm still doing supply wagon runs and maintaining because, again, I don't know. I don't know that I'm only 30 seconds away from the end of the scenario. I think I'm an hour away. So yeah, if I knew that, I wouldn't be worrying about any of this stuff. I'd be sipping on a cold beverage, waiting for the timer to run out. Yeah, so we have another gun that's fallen off the line here, and I want to bring them back there again out of canister. But as I said, the game is over. So yeah, that popped up, and that was a big surprise to me because I thought we still had an hour to go. But nope, that was it. The scenario is actually 4 hours long, not 5 hours. But nevertheless, you can see we clinched a major victory by nearly 4,000 points, or over 4,000 points, 4,100 points. We inflicted nearly over 9,500 casualties on the enemy, while taking under 1,500 casualties ourselves. It was a complete massacre. But nevertheless, that scenario really kept me on my toes. There were a lot of, I don't want to say anxious moments. There were never really moments where I felt like I was not in control of the situation. But there were, especially during the middle 2 hours of that scenario, it was just, even for me, it was a lot to watch and a lot to keep track of. And it definitely kept me on my toes in terms of how many different isolated areas of action there were all going on at once. But it sort of cooled down there in the last half hour of the scenario and really gave me time to mentally rest, so to speak. And I would have been really ready to unleash my artillery on that group of Austrian cavalry that I was setting up for. But it was not to be. The scenario is only 4 hours long. So I am expecting that the the Austrian scenario, I think, which also is listed as 5 hours long. I'm guessing it's also 4 hours long. Uh, all right, guys, that is it for the full French battle of the Souffel. I hope you guys dug it. And when next I return, we have one scenario left in Les Saint Jours, and of course, that is this battle as the Austrians. And we will figure out how we're going to go about taking down the French and ending Napoleon's reign once and for all. Take it easy, guys. I will see you next time.